Hello, Mark. Hello, everyone. I'm so thrilled we're here together today.
Thank you, Mira. It's really great to be here, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of the listeners for tuning in. I've been really looking forward to this discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to tell you, the very first thing I would love for us to start with is to talk about how did you move from a legal career to being a psychic explorer to having all these amazing artifacts behind you, right? Because I can tell each one has a lot of energy and meaning to you. So please take us into your world and your story.
Well, I write a lot about my early childhood and life in all three of my books, Never Letting Go, Evidence of Eternity, and my most recent book, The Afterlife Frequency. And it would probably take the whole show just to answer that question. But because a lot of people say, well, how can you possibly be a lawyer and a psychic medium? The thing is, I was born into a family that psychic ability, it appears to be a genetic trait. Both my parents had these abilities, and it runs for generations on both sides of the family. And there's a lot of really fascinating people that have been involved with contact with the other side and metaphysical experiences that I write a lot about. But when I was about 3.5 years old, I started seeing spirits, and both my parents could see them too. And their reactions were very different. You know, my dad was a NASA engineer, but before that, he was a Navy SEAL. And then my mother was a commercial artist. And so here I am, and I start interacting with spirits, and they can see them too. And my mother's reaction is, "Oh, he's got it." And my father's was, "Oh God, he's got it," because he knew how difficult it could be. So this was always part of me. So when people say, like, what came first, the medium or the lawyer? Well, the medium. And then I decided I wanted to go into the clergy, actually. I was raised in a Catholic family, but we weren't real dogmatic. My dad his family was Baptist. My mother's family was Italians, and they were Catholic. And it's not unusual for natural mediums to be drawn to the clergy. But as I started getting older, I just felt that it was too restrictive. It was too narrow, because I've spent my life, my interest studying the nature of God, the afterlife, spirituality. It's taken me to many places around the world, and so I felt there were too many rules and regulations in the clergy, so I ended up going to law school. So Mira, it's kind of like I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire, and I practiced law. I was a prosecutor, then I was criminal defense. I was complex civil personal injury litigation. I've tried over 100 jury trials and thousands of bench trials and hearings. And it just came to a point in my life where I had an epiphany, and everything changed.
Please tell me about it. What a perfect place to create a pause and an interest in the audience. You're good at this. You must have been an amazing litigator.
Um, with all due modesty, I was pretty
Yeah,
good.
I
Pretty
can
good.
tell, yes.
Well, I'd always had a very good relationship with my parents, and my mother and I were very well connected. And there was one day I was in my law office, and I was working on, and I was thinking about spaghetti. Now, I'm Italian, so it's not unusual to think about spaghetti, but all of a sudden, my assistant puts a call through. She goes, "Oh, your mom's on the line." And it was my mother, and she said, "Hey, honey, I just made spaghetti for lunch. Can you come over?" And I thought, sure. Okay. And it was great. And she made it with rapini, and it was like, a real, home style vegetarian but delicious type dish. And I had the most amazing lunch with my parents, but I noticed that my mom looked really tired, and she was a little bit unsteady on her feet. But and my dad, he was there. And before I left, my mother hugged me, and she said, "Mark, I love you so much." Now, we always, hug each other, and my parents always said, no matter what, end every conversation with, I love you. And I said, I love you too, Mom. But then she said, and I'm so fortunate that you've been my son. And, Mira, that was kind of an odd, very different thing to say. And I said, Mom, I love you too. Well, the next day I was in court. And of course, I had to be in front of one of my least favorite judges, and things are, but his assistant came into the courtroom and said, Mark, we need you in chambers right now. And I went into the judge's chambers, and she handed me the phone, and her hand was shaking. And it was my assistant on the phone. She was crying, and she said, Mark, your father called, your mom died.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. And I spiraled, I mean, like, out of control. And not that I lost control, but I mean, it's that horrible sensation that everybody who's watching this program knows. Everyone who's lost a loved one knows what that feeling, that caving in, that you can't believe it. And naturally I was devastated. And then it's about 2 or 3 weeks later, it was about 3 weeks later, and I was driving back from court, and one of those waves hit me, those waves of grief. Grief is a tricky thing. It's with you forever, and you get to the point where it's more manageable than ever others. But every now and then a wave of grief hits. It's like a tsunami. And I knew I needed to pull over. I pulled over into a convenience store parking lot because I kept thinking, if I walk into my law firm, and I was a senior partner of a law firm, I couldn't walk in there crying and all this. So I sat there and in a parking space, and suddenly there was like this flash of light. And the thing is, Mira, to this day, I don't know if the light was like in the car or it was in my head, but I instinctively turned to the passenger seat. And for a second, I saw the silhouette of my mother in this silver white light. All right, so now I'm trying to process this, and then her voice fills my head. And she said to me, Mark, you've been given the gift of mediumship so that you would not be crushed by grief, but now you must help those who are suffering with theirs. All right. So now I sink back into my seat, and I'm just soaking wet, and I'm like, okay. And I'm trying to process this, and then I hear her voice again, and she said, your life's mission is to help people understand that God exists, that heaven, the afterlife exists, that your souls are immortal living beings, that humans can communicate with souls, and we will all be reunited when it is your appointed time to leave the material world and come into the light that is God. All right, now I'm like soaking wet with sweat, and I'm trying to process all of this. And Mira, all I thought was, if I tell anybody this, they're going to think I'm insane. And it's so funny when I talk to people, and they say when they have their enlightenment experience or their spiritual experience, and they'll say, well, I was on top of this mountain in Sedona, and all of a sudden, it came to, mine was like a fire hose right into the face. And I'm thinking about it, it's like, that's my dad, the Navy SEAL, my mom, Italian, we're not ones for understated or quiet. And everything in my life changed from that moment on. I mean, I had these abilities from day one, but now they came to the surface in a very, very long way. And then I knew there was no going back. And the funny thing is, Mira, right after that, I was offered a job at a government agency. And I realized this is how now I can segue out of the practice of law. Because when you're practicing law and you have 100 or however many clients at any one time. But I knew when I took that job, it was going to be temporary. And I started working on my first book, Never Letting Go. So then Never Letting Go comes out about a year or so later. And I brought on board my manager, Rocky. She travels with me, and she got me an appearance on MSNBC on a show called The Docket. Okay, so we're in New York City at 30 Rock, and it's really cool because we're in the studio right next to where they filmed Saturday Night Live. And, I was like, hey, isn't this cool, And then after that, she got me a gig speaking at Harvard. All right, so we leave MSNBC and then we fly up to Harvard, to Boston, and all of a sudden my cell phone rings and it's the elected official, and he says, the I won't name the party, but you can probably figure which one, filled with evangelical nut jobs, is giving me a really hard time because I have a psychic on staff and you're taking too much time off, and he's going on and on. And I said, yeah, but all the time I'm taking off is vacation time, which I put in for. But I'll make this very simple for you. He goes, how so? I said, I quit. He goes, oh. I go, except this is my resignation. So I hang up my cell phone and then I look at Rocky and I say, oh my God, I just quit the practice of law. And she said, Mark, look around. And I'm looking around. She goes, where are you? I said, Harvard. She goes, what are you doing in an hour? I said, giving a lecture about the afterlife and signing copies of my new book. She goes, don't you think you're right where you're supposed to be? And Mira, I've never looked back.
Amazing. Oh my God. Oh my God. Every beat of your story is absolutely exceptional. And how did you transition? Did you ever look back and miss it? Or did you, like you said, it was only forward and forging a new path?
Well, people ask me if I miss the practice of law,
Yeah.
and the thing is, I enjoy doing that, and I think overall I was very good at it, but and it gave me a skill set which has I've transitioned into what I'm doing now, because I facilitate communication between people in our world and their loved ones in spirit. Okay, so I'm a medium and I do readings, but I'm also a near-death experience researcher, afterlife science researcher. I am an expert in ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomenon. And so I give lectures on those. In fact, in 2024, just in the first quarter, I'll be headlining at the Sedona Ascension Retreat, the New Living Expo, two different Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment venues, one at the Unity of Tampa in Florida, the other one at Virginia Beach. Later this year, I'll be headlining at Helping Parents Heal conference in Phoenix, and also have been invited to speak at the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and in addition to several other events that I'll be doing throughout the country. So my experience as a trial lawyer and being in front of people has helped me be able to give these presentations and these talks, because everything that I do as a medium is explainable through science. Near-death experiences, deathbed visions, shared death experiences, out-of-body experiences, all of them are explainable through science. And that's what I'm doing, is helping people understand that this isn't magic or hocus pocus. And for legitimate mediums like myself and several of my colleagues, this is real. And not everyone's a medium, but everyone is capable of having a mediumistic experience, contact with the loved one, be it a feeling or in a dream, or you just notice things, maybe you hear something. And, for too long, people have said, oh, it's a grief-induced hallucination, it's my imagination. They're putting it off to the side. But now those of us who are studying this as a science, we see that this is a real thing.
Absolutely, right? In my mind, it's so settled. I'm so glad that you're bridging science and spirituality and making it so accessible to people. I really value and appreciate that about your work. And you mentioned Sedona, and I would love for us to speak about energy vortices.
Ooh,
Right?
perfect show.
All right,
Perfect show for
let's
that.
dive into that. I would love to hear, what is it like for you when you're in Sedona? Have you been, have you had experiences of any other vortices on the planet? Let's talk about all those things. I'm super excited about that.
I do have a funny story about Sedona. First off, if for the listeners, for the audience, if you have not been to Sedona, put it on your list. It's considered by tour guides, by travelers, adventurers, as one of the most beautiful places on earth, and it really is. I mean, like Mira said, it's an energy vortex, or more than one. There's vortices. There's, I think, at least 5 main vortices there, and then there's several smaller ones. Let me explain what we mean by an energy vortex. An energy vortex is like a whirlpool of energy. Now, we know whirlpools from, you empty the drain in your sink, you drain your sink and you see the little whirlpool. You see a tornado in the sky, that's a vortex. But energy, electromagnetic energy, also has a whirlpool effect. And one of the striking things about Sedona is the orange and red mountains. Well, why are they orange and red? Well, that's because they're heavily iron-based. And when iron rusts, it turns orange. Now, what are magnets? Magnets are iron. So what we have at Sedona is all these gigantic electromagnetically charged mountains. And supposedly, the theory is that a vortex is where one or more ley lines, which is also the name of the show, ley lines intersect. A ley line is believed to be a naturally occurring line along the Earth's surface where electromagnetic energy is emitted in higher concentrations than it is at other places on Earth. So when you get intersections of ley lines, and Sedona has many, you get this electromagnetic whirlpool. Now, what's really cool about that is some of the plants, some of the cactuses in Sedona have this twisted appearance to them. And botanists have been studying this, going, why are the cactuses here all twisted up like a corkscrew? Well, one of the theories is it's due to the response to the natural vortices of the electromagnetic energy. So back in, I'm trying to think when this was, I think it was 2016, I was on tour and I was conducting an evening of spirit communication in Sedona, and my manager, Rocky, she wasn't feeling well. We'd been out in the saguaro forests in southern Arizona. Now we were up in the higher altitudes, and she kept saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. So when I finished my spirit communication event, but during the spirit communication event, I'm in front of about 100 people. It was at the Yavapai College, which is on Native American, the Yavapai land, beautiful facility. And a male spirit came through and kept saying, Daisy, Daisy. And I said, does Daisy make sense to anybody? Nobody raises their hand. I said, I'm getting the name Daisy. There's a man here who wants to talk to Daisy. Nobody said anything. So all right, I moved on, and then the event was over. And by this time, I knew Rocky was really sick. And so I had to rush her to the hospital, which was fortunately just about a mile away. And the second I got her into the emergency room, they grabbed her and they hit her with steroids. And I knew, because I was getting a medical intuitive, they're going to need steroids. And they got her on oxygen, and they said, oh, we've had 26 cases just like this today. It is the spores from the juniper, and they're seeking out moisture, which means human lungs, and it was sending her into respiratory failure. And if she wasn't there, she could have died. And I'm like, oh my God. So there she is, and we have her in, you know how the emergency room is, they have the curtains around each cubicle, and she's on the steroids, and they got the oxygen mask on her, and and all of a sudden the curtain opens from the cubicle next to us, and this lady sticks her head through, and she goes, are you Mark Anthony, the medium? And I go, yeah. She goes, well, I was supposed to come to see you tonight at the Yavapai College, but my friend, and she opens the curtain more, she got what your manager got, and I had to bring her here. She goes, I know this is like an inappropriate time. Would you autograph your book for me. And I go, sure, what's your name? She goes, Daisy.
Wow.
And Rocky's like,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and what I have found is that spirits are going to get a message through to you one way or another. And I look at that situation as what I have termed spiritual synchronicity. There was a very complicated series of events that led me to that place at that time for this woman's late husband to get a message to his wife, Daisy. I mean, what are the odds of that happening?
Right, when things like that happen, we sit back and we say, wow, the awe of it all, right? And I so love that you were speaking about this, because yesterday I was driving, as I was sitting in a traffic light, I was thinking, God, I want something amazing to happen. I want a synchronicity that leaves me at awe. I'm gonna count this in as the answer to my prayer, because to me, this is really a moment of really saying life is bigger and more extraordinary than what we can ever even possibly imagine. Yes. And going back to what you were sharing, so Sedona is a place where not only do you feel at home, I imagine, but there's
Oh
also
yeah.
a lot for you to connect and research, right?
I do. Sedona, it's very hard not to feel something. And for 14 centuries, the Native Americans have always considered Sedona a sacred site. For, like I said, 14 cent, the last 1400 years. And, and now, it's kind of a new age and metaphysical mecca, but there's more to it than just that. And aside from its stunning beauty, but every group of people that has come to Sedona does feel a connection there. And something like the Daisy situation. I mean, certainly that could have happened somewhere else, but it just seems so apropos to have happened in Sedona. And what I find in Sedona, it's a positive energy vortex. There are other places on the planet that aren't quite so positive. But before we get to those, other places that are believed to be an energy vortex. And what it is, human beings have been naturally seeking these out since the dawn of history. The Giza Plateau, where the Great Pyramids are, is believed to be an energy vortex. The city of Machu Picchu in the Peruvian Andes, the Pyramid of Chichen Itza in the Yucatan, Stonehenge in England. There are several sites throughout the world that are believed to be energy vortexes, and humans build these amazing temples on what they consider to be sacred sites. The Native Americans in the area of Sedona are the Hononaki ruins, and the Hononakis were a very advanced civilization. They built basically apartment buildings. I've been out to the Hononaki ruins and examined them, and there's all these petroglyphs, which were carvings in the rock faces. As of yet, archaeologists have not been able to decipher that. I was out there with this one guide, and he said, "Well, we're not sure if it's a language." And I'm looking at it, go, "Yes, it is most definitely a language." It's like when before Egyptian hieroglyphs were interpreted, they look like pretty pictures, but archaeologists knew they meant something. We just hadn't cracked the code yet. So, but Sedona has just a very positive energy to it. And like I said, there's a number of places throughout the world that have that. There's some places that have a bit of a negative energy. One of those is considered to be the so-called Bermuda Triangle. And the Bermuda Triangle is between Bermuda, Florida, and I think it's Puerto Rico, in the Atlantic. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Puerto Rico, and it's a triangular shape. And for centuries, ships have disappeared there, and airplanes, and there's many stories about that. And of course, ships and planes disappear everywhere. except for the fact that in a number of incidents, it has been recorded that all of a sudden the compasses start going haywire. And the first time that that was documented was by Christopher Columbus, when his ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, entered the area that we now know as the Bermuda Triangle. They recorded on all three ships that the compasses started going haywire. The squadron, there's a squadron of 5 aircraft in World War II. They disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle, and they reported their compasses going crazy. Other ships have reported that. And the theory, Mira, is that, okay, you go beneath the ocean. There's several theories, but this is the one that I believe is of the ocean bottom, and then you have the bottom of the ocean, and the Earth's crust there is thinner, and beneath that is the molten magma, okay? Liquid iron. And the thing is, we know that the Earth's magnetic pole shifts. There's a difference between true north, the North Pole, and the magnetic North Pole. And the magnetic North Pole has been shifting in a western direction through northern Canada. It's been documented over the past 100 years. It is actually moving. And it appears that there are times when the electromagnetic activity of the Bermuda Triangle is more active than others. So is this a negative energy vortex? On one hand, I'd say yes, because a lot of people have disappeared and planes and ships have gone down. I mean, there was 2 giant freighters years apart that just disappeared there. And these were big ships, and they haven't found them on the ocean bottom. The question is, were they dragged away by magnetic forces? Were they dragged underneath? And of course, some of my colleagues say, well, it's not only a vortex, but it's a portal to another dimension and aliens and all that. But before we start, consulting little green men from flying saucers, let's look at the most probable theory first. So anyway, that's my short and condensed version on vortexes or vortices.
I really appreciate that. And I wonder, how can we make it practical for people? So say somebody's visiting a vortex like that. What are they to do with that energy? How are they to use it? Say I'm going to Sedona or any of our listeners. But also, I would love for us to elaborate. If I'm just sitting home in LA, how do I'm not physically there. Is there a way for me to use that energy and that portal, that vortex? I would love to hear your thoughts and speculations, right? Because maybe we're going into speculations now.
Well, we are, but then again, we all have an electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
One of my signature theories is the electromagnetic soul. And every great spiritual teacher, since the sages of ancient India, through Zoroaster, through Buddha, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Gandhi, I mean, coming all the way up to the current day, the Native American spiritualists, they all talk about the who and what we are, which is a soul that comes into, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, leaves after the body dies, all right? From the first law of thermodynamics in physics teaches us energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And we know that everything is made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are comprised of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are made of the smallest particle known as a quantum. That's where the term quantum physics comes from. And that particle is pure electromagnetic energy. Now, this is really fascinating because that means everything from the chairs that we're sitting on to our bodies, to the radio waves that this program is being broadcast on, to the rays of light from the sun, to the rings of Saturn and beyond, are all at the most fundamental level electromagnetic energy. So in a sense, we are all a vortex. And so I developed the term the electromagnetic soul to describe what I believe we really are. Pure consciousness that is eternal electromagnetic energy. All right. So yes, when you're in a place like Sedona or the Great Pyramids or Machu Picchu, and you feel this energy around you. That's fantastic. But the key is to feel that energy when you're not there. And you can do this through meditation, through prayer, because remember, we're all interconnected. And when I was a little boy and I was going to Catholic school, and they said, we're all brothers and sisters, we're all connected. And then when you start studying different religions on a deeper level, and they talk about interconnectedness, and on one hand, that sounds like that's very nice and philosophical. But then when you start studying physics and realize, well, we really are all interconnected, because we really are all bonded by electromagnetic energy. It's just that things vibrate at different frequencies. Like, I have a different frequency than this pen. Okay. This pen, doesn't vibrate on the frequency I do, but on the subatomic level, we're both composed of electromagnetic energy, which is also fascinating because traditionally sciences have been split into biological and physical. Biological is the squishy sciences. It's the science of things that are alive. The physical is chemical, solid, geology. And so for centuries, never the twain shall meet. It's either physical or biological. But now, with the advent and the progression that we've made in the field of quantum physics, on the subatomic level, there is no difference between biology and physics, because on the most fundamental level, everything is that form of energy. Now, for the physicists who are watching, I do realize that there are other forms of energy. There's gravity, there's the strong magnetic, the strong bonds, and the weak bonds, and I understand that. Nuclear bonds, and that deals with other things. But as far as those of us living in the material world, and we're not dealing with what's going on within a star, okay, everything is electromagnetic energy, which also means that we're all interconnected. And I think that, Mira, for centuries, the great spiritual teachers, they may not have had the physics vernacular, but they were trying to teach people this. And apparently humanity has not gotten the memo. We're still blowing each other up. We're still inflicting horrible suffering upon each other. You look at what's going on in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, all over the world. And if people would actually realize that we are all interconnected, I would hope that it would get people thinking, gee, maybe I should be trying to obliterate these people. I don't mean to get on a soapbox or get political, but it just saddens me. I've been all over this world. It's the most beautiful planet that we know of. I mean, people say, oh, I'd love to go to Mars. Well, yeah, nothing grows there, at least what we can see. It's freezing cold. It's a desert in space. I mean, heck, I like walking around in forests and walking on the beach and being around people. And this is such a beautiful planet, and it's such a precious drop of life in our universe.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to blow each other into atoms, we should be working together to enjoy it.
Yeah. And so you're saying if we're all interconnected, then should I be imagining in my head that right next to me and right next to, in other words, there's about, I don't even know how far away from LA is Sedona, but I know it's about 8 or 9 hours. So should I imagine 8 or 9 hours of people next to each other so the energy continues to extend? Or am I gonna, right? So that's how I imagine myself being there and being able to tap into that energy. Or should I just simply imagine that my own electromagnetic field is projected there? And then what do I do with this? So do you understand? I come back to, okay,
Sure.
this is amazing. I've been to Sedona. I felt things and I still don't know what to do with it, right?
Well, I think you can do both. You can feel
Okay.
connected through people, or you can
Okay.
feel that your electromagnetic soul is reaching out. I mean, that's the nature of remote viewing,
Yeah.
is taking your consciousness and projecting it to another location to sense and actually see and feel what's happening in real time. You can do both. You can do both. but perhaps you should think about the harmony that you had in Sedona and recreate it within yourself.
That's what you were saying. Feel that energy at home, not necessarily needing to be at the Great Pyramids in Egypt. Gotcha.
And the
Yeah.
thing is, it's so funny, like, I've been to beautiful places like in Peru on mountaintops and in Sedona and Maui and other places. And people are like, oh, it's so spiritual here. Well, yeah, of course, it's really easy to be spiritual when you're sitting on a mountaintop in Sedona. The challenge is when you're stuck in traffic in LA and you got to go and you had something, a couple cups of coffee before you left. And now it's like, I don't think I'll be able to get to a bath. Now, that is the challenge for being spiritual, is when you're under stress and patience. Anybody can be spiritual on a mountaintop when you're grooving. It's when we're living in the everyday world, subjected to all our stresses. And the reason I say stuck in traffic in LA, because I have been stuck in traffic in LA on many occasions, and I have to admit it isn't fun. That's my least favorite part about LA. Everything else I love.
Yeah, I hear you. I wonder, what is one thing that you have experienced with spirit, with the messages you have received, that has really made an impact on you? Obviously, your own personal story with your mom is
Yeah.
mind-blowing, but I wonder, something else that you can share with us, something else that left an impact on you and made you say, wow, wow.
It was during COVID. What was happening, Mira, is in late 2019, I kept doing readings for people where their spirits, their loved ones in spirit would come through, and they kept showing me surgical masks, and they kept saying March 2020. And I was like, and I'd ask the client, are you scheduled for surgery or something? And I was trying to decipher this. And everyone was like, well, no, and I'm not in the medical profession, so the surgical mask didn't make any sense. This wasn't just one reading, this was several. And it would come in, it was to be a couple seconds. And then in March 2020, I started getting emails right and left from all these people that said, oh my God, now I know what they meant, is because we were all in lockdown. And then it was during another session, it was a meditative, I was meditating and the message came to me. And I know this is controversial and there's a lot of people, that'll get all bent out of shape, but when we were in lockdown for that 6 weeks, okay, people were staying home, people weren't traveling. All of a sudden, and this is what came to me, this is what was told to me, and it was confirmed in the news, for the first time in 400 years, dolphins were spotted in the canals of Venice. In Mumbai, India, and in Beijing, China, the air cleared. People could actually see the skyline. In Yellowstone and other places, vegetation started regrowing, animals started coming out, air quality was cleaner, the oceans were beginning to thrive. And during that time, armed conflicts, there was still some idiots, doing things, but for the most part, things really, really settled down. And meanwhile, the Earth's best and brightest chemists, biologists, and medical researchers were all working on developing a vaccine to combat COVID. Now, of course, I know there's the whole people, oh, it's evil, blah, 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 but let's get that nonsense out of the way. The thing is, the other side, which I call the collective consciousness, told me humanity has been given a glimpse of what you can do if you work together. And it dawned on me, for a brief period of time, like we were sending ventilators to Russia, they were sending things to us, the Chinese were working on vaccine, everybody was getting along because of this terrible disease, okay? And I was shown, or rather humanity was shown, that if our scientists started sharing data and working together, we could solve food production, we could solve pollution, we could solve everything, because we have the skill set, we have the brain trust. And then all of a sudden it abruptly ended. We got to reopen the country. We got to, and all of a sudden Earth slid right back. Humans went right back to their same old aggressive habits. And so that was a very profound message, because we have the ability to save ourselves. It's here. And I'm an incurable optimist. Unfortunately, my work as an attorney and as living in the real world, sometimes jades that. But I'm going to keep that optimism, because it is very possible. And I'm not saying that means one country or one form of government has to control another. It doesn't. We can all be different, but we can all work together. I mean, think about it. If our scientists, instead of working on new types of missiles to blow each other up, were working on clean sources of energy that don't pollute the air and the water, if they're working on food production that doesn't deforest, if we're working on advanced medical technology, I mean, this planet would go from being this unending pool of conflict to paradise.
Yeah.
We have that ability. And this is the first time in history, because we've never had so many educated and intelligent and technically capable people. It's here now. That is the big revelation that I received.
It truly is a profound revelation, because it takes the message that you heard as a little boy, as a young man, that we're all brothers and sisters, that we're all one. It takes it to a whole another level, that we're one in so many other layers, right? With nature, with the divine. I really see the incredible awareness of this message. And talking about oneness, we've been talking about energy centers and vortices out there, right into the world. It makes me wonder, how about the energy centers inside our body? Right, the chakras that we all speak
Chakras,
of,
yeah.
the biology of our bodies. I would love to bring that into the conversation and hear if you have any thoughts on it.
Oh yeah, quite quite a few thoughts on that. I write about that extensively in my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency. But we have 7 chakras in our body, and for the yoga folks, they're symbolized with color. You have the violet chakra, which is at the crown of the head. Then you have the indigo at the center of the head, the proverbial third eye chakra. Then you have the blue chakra in your throat, the green in your heart, the yellow in the solar plexus. That's a real important one. Then orange and below that around the belly button. And then at the base of our spine is the red chakra. But the interesting thing is all 7 chakras in our body also correspond with the 7 endocrine glands in our body. Now, how the Hindus who developed yoga 5,000 years ago figured that out is certainly a fascinating topic of discussion. And each of the endocrine glands secretes a hormone, and it's a chemical electrical device. Each one of those organs, here we get back to the electrical, they all secrete both hormones and control electrical activity. And each one of those are energy centers. Now, for the people that are heavily into chakras and studying them, yes, there's many more all throughout our body. And when you study acupuncture, you see that each acupuncture point's like a little mini chakra, but the 7 main ones all coincide with endocrine glands. So we have these electromagnetic hotspots, if you will, within us. And the 2 that are the most involved with spirit communication are the proverbial third eye chakra, which is associated with the indigo color. And if you go about 4 to 5 inches beyond the center of our forehead, within the brain is a small gland, the pineal gland. And the pineal gland, it's between the size of a piece of rice, a grain of rice, and maybe a lima bean. It's a small gland, but it's also the most mysterious, the least understood, and one of the most studied glands on our body. It controls the secretion of melatonin, which is a hormone that helps us sleep, but it also regulates brainwave activity. And it also processes our ability, or rather handles our ability to perceive and process light, controls our circadian rhythms. I mean, it's super complicated. But the thing is, recent studies have found within it are calcite and magnetite crystals. So both of which, when exerted to pressure, when pressure is exerted on them, they have what's known as piezoelectric properties, which means they generate an electromagnetic charge. It's interesting how we keep getting back to electromagnetic energy. Okay, so from the pineal gland in your brain to the Bermuda Triangle, we're talking electromagnetic energy. And then there's the solar plexus, which is at the base of the rib cage. That's the yellow chakra. And that is the second most complex bundle of nerves outside of the cerebral cortex. Some scientists are referring to it as the second brain. People say, second brain, we got more than one brain. Well, an octopus has 8 brains. Okay. It's got, one for each arm. And actually, I think it has more than that. But other species have more than one brain to control varying functions. And like I said, in my book, Afterlife Frequency, I get into extreme detail on how these work and how working with them will make you more sensitive to receiving spiritual messages. But once again, these are all predicated upon electromagnetic energy. And that ties into my EMS, my electromagnetic soul theory, that spirit communication isn't some, hocus pocus, wishful thinking, carnival sideshow thing, but it is an actual phenomenon which is explainable through sound scientific principles.
And as you're speaking of this, I'm so thrilled that you brought up the pineal gland, because I do so much work with it. I'm so aware of it. I love to imagine sitting inside my pineal gland and allowing for that spirit communication and meditating on that. How do you, in your own personal work, feel that your biology, your pineal gland, your third eye, how does that allow you to connect with spirit? Obviously, you came that way. It was a natural ability. But
I
I
was
want you to,
prepackaged.
yeah, yes, exactly. The factory settings were on for you. But how do you use it now? Do you focus on it in any way? What do you
Oh,
teach
sure.
people?
Oh,
Right?
sure. One of the meditations I do is a chakra clearing. It's easy. You sit there and you close your eyes, because a lot of people think when you meditate, it's got to be for hours. You got to try to levitate things. It's like, look, I'm a busy guy. Okay. I don't sit there all day like, I mean, my meditations are 5, maybe 10 minutes tops. And what I do is I envision each of the energy centers in their colors and have a beam of white light coming from God, from the divine, through my body. And the beam of white light first goes to the red chakra, and think of it like a glass ball. And it's all murky because you got all this funk and gunk and stress. And all of a sudden the white light hits it and boom, knocks all the funk and gunk out of there, makes it a bright red, bright, healthy red. Then you move to the orange chakra. Okay, then to the yellow chakra. Now at the yellow chakra, at the solar plexus, in spirit communication, this is where you receive the sensory, the physical sensations, the emotions. So imagine that beam of light purifying that to where now it's glowing a beautiful, healthy yellow. Your heart chakra. Okay, our heart. It's more than a pump. We talk about it, my feelings in my heart, because your heart is a reactive organ. When you're stressed, it beats harder. Focus on energy clearing out. Then so you have this bright emerald green sphere glowing in your heart. Then with your throat chakra, same thing. And then of course the all important pineal gland, you want that to be this beautiful indigo light. And then the violet light, okay, at the top of your head is associated with the pituitary gland. Okay, you got to, the brain's a very complex organ, and neuroscientists are not even close to understanding everything about it, but that's your connection to the collective consciousness. That's part of the interconnectedness. And it only takes a few minutes to do this. Go through and envision clearing all your chakras. Breathe in through your nose, focus on your red chakra, exhale through your mouth, and then boom, now it's bright red, and then take it all the way up.
I love that. That is so so wonderful too. To imagine I was doing it with you as you were going over the steps. Thank you. I would love for us to bring our conversation to a close with something that is coming through as a message. Maybe some spirit has some daisy message for us. Maybe there's something you would like to bring and share with us. Anything that comes to mind.
I don't think there's anything I can add other than if if you want to affect change in the world, start with yourself. And we've all heard be the change that you want to see in the world. Well, slogans are nice, but treat people the way you want to be treated. Start there. Respect other people's boundaries. If somebody says they don't want to talk about something or reveal personal information or something, back off. Okay? Start there. And also, if you see an elderly person, open the door for them. Acknowledge their existence. Smile at them. I mean, think about, ourselves. If all of a sudden you see a beautiful 22-year-old smile at you, doesn't that make your day? Well, think about somebody in their late 70s, 80s, or 90s that are treated like wallpaper. If you take the effort to say something to them. If you have an elderly friend or relative, pick up the phone. Do not text them. Pick up the phone and call them. Also, send them a letter, even a postcard. What do elderly people get in the mail? Bills, junk mail. They like to read letters. Hi, grandma. Hi, great aunt or great uncle so-and-so, or hey, whoever. Let people know you care. That may sound somewhat trivial, but this is all part of changing the world. You start with being kind to people and respecting their boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really the little things, because when we think about changing the world, we think, oh, how do I clean the ocean of plastic? But it's really about reaching to my great
Well,
aunt.
yeah, and start by putting the plastic in the recycle bin. It drives me nuts. I live near the ocean. I walk on the beach and there's beer bottles and soda cans. And it's like, for God's sakes, there's a garbage can 200 feet away. Okay. Yeah. Yes. We want to stop purging purge the ocean of plastics. Well, start with your own consumption. That's a very good point, Mira. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Thank you. I really loved our conversation, and I imagine people would want to connect with you. You already spoke of the conferences where you're speaking. I imagine that you're also doing one-on-one sessions so people can reach out to you. Am I right?
I do, and every week, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, I co-host The Psychic and the Doc on Transformation Network. And my co-host, Dr. Pat Basili, is a world-renowned behavioral psychologist. So you can call in. I'll do a mini reading for you in conjunction with Dr. Pat's insights to help you understand it. And to find out about all of that, to keep up to date on my tour schedule, to find out about one-on-ones with me, please visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com, just like my latest book, Afterlife Frequency. And I invite you to sign up for my newsletter there, and you go to my calendar of events to see what's coming up. But it's real easy at afterlifefrequency.com. And Mira, I want to thank you so very much for having me as your guest. Many blessings.
It was such a joy to speak with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.